The massive crystal screen flickered to life in the Galactic Council chamber, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of representatives from 1,000 worlds. Ambassador Zexthari of the Reptilian Confederacy stood at the podium, her scaled hands trembling slightly as she activated the emergency broadcast system. Distinguished members of the Council, her voice echoed through the vast chamber, we face an unprecedented crisis. The dragon monarch Velkathara has awakened from her 1,000-year slumber, and she has issued a challenge that threatens the very fabric of our galaxy. A collective gasp rippled through the assembly. The dragon monarch was legend made flesh, an ancient being whose power could reshape star systems with a thought. Her last awakening had resulted in the destruction of 3 entire solar systems before she returned to her eternal rest. The holographic display shifted, showing the obsidian fortress world where Velkathara held court. Lightning cracked across its surface like veins of molten gold, and the very space around it warped and twisted under the weight of her presence. The monarch has declared that our current galactic civilization has grown weak and complacent, Zexthari continued, her voice growing more strained. She demands that we send our strongest champion to face her in single combat. If our champion succeeds, she will return to her slumber for another millennium. If they fail, she paused, swallowing hard, she will personally oversee the cleansing of what she calls our pathetic excuse for sentient life. Representative Galnash of the warrior caste world slammed his massive fist on his desk, the sound echoing like thunder. Then we send our greatest fighter. I volunteer myself. My people have conquered 73 worlds through strength alone. With respect, honored Galnash, interrupted Dr. Millicent Vex of the Synthetic Collective, her mechanical voice carrying an odd note of concern. Preliminary scans suggest that raw physical power may not be sufficient. The Dragon Monarch's challenge specifically requests the strongest champion of spirit and will, not merely muscle and metal. The chamber erupted into heated debate. The psychic hegemony proposed sending their most powerful mind-bender. The techno-supremacists wanted to deploy their latest battle android. The Void Walkers suggested one of their reality manipulators who could step between dimensions. Through it all, the human delegation sat quietly in their modest section of the chamber. Earth was still considered a minor member of the Galactic Council, having joined only 50 years ago. Most species viewed humans as unremarkable, not the strongest, not the smartest, not the most technologically advanced. They were the diplomatic equivalent of background noise. Ambassador Chen Wei, a dignified woman in her 60s, finally stood up. "If I may," she said, her voice calm but carrying clearly through the chaos. The chamber gradually fell silent, more out of curiosity than respect. It was rare for the humans to speak up in major galactic affairs. "We would like to nominate Earth's champion," Chen announced. Galnash let out a booming laugh that shook the nearby seats. "No offense, human, but your species has barely left your single star system. What could you possibly offer against a being who has lived for millennia?" Chen smiled that particular human smile that other species had learned to find either endearing or deeply unsettling, depending on the circumstances. "We've been studying the Dragon Monarch's history and previous challenges. Every champion sent against her has been a warrior, a conqueror, a being of power seeking to match her strength with their own. They all failed because they misunderstood the nature of the challenge." Dr. Vex's optical sensors focused intently on the human ambassador. "Explain your reasoning." "The Dragon Monarch isn't looking for someone who can overpower her," Chen continued. "She's looking for someone who can show her something she's never seen before. She's lived for thousands of years, witnessed the rise and fall of empires, seen every form of combat and conquest imaginable. She's bored. She's testing us not to find a worthy opponent, but to find something genuinely surprising." The chamber was now completely silent, every representative hanging on Chen's words. "Earth nominates our champion, Miss Sarah Martinez, kindergarten teacher from Phoenix, Arizona." The silence stretched for exactly 3 seconds before the entire chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates were shouting, some in outrage, others in disbelief, a few in what might have been hysterical laughter. "You want to send a teacher," Galnash roared, "against a cosmic entity that could vaporize planets." "Specifically, a teacher of younglings," Chen clarified with unshakable calm. "Age range 5 to 6 years old, Earth standard." Ambassador Zexthari's reptilian features contorted in confusion. "Honored Chen, I must ask if this is some form of human humor that we don't understand. The fate of our galaxy hangs in the balance. I am completely serious, Chen replied. If you examine the Dragon Monarch's own words, she asked for our strongest champion of spirit and will. She didn't specify physical strength or combat prowess. Sarah Martinez has spent 15 years managing, educating, and inspiring groups of tiny humans who possess more chaotic energy than a supernova and less impulse control than a quantum particle. She has broken up fights over toys that would make diplomatic wars look simple. She has convinced beings who communicate primarily through screaming and crying to sit quietly and listen to stories. She has taken creatures whose natural state is absolute chaos and taught them to share, to wait their turn, and to say please and thank you. Dr. Vex's processors whirred audibly as she analyzed this information. The human makes an interesting point. Child management requires a unique combination of patience, creativity, authority, and emotional intelligence. Furthermore, Chen continued, warming to her topic, Miss Martinez has never lost a student. In 15 years of teaching, she has successfully guided over 300 young humans through their crucial early development period. She has dealt with children who bite, children who throw things, children who refuse to listen, children who have never been told no in their lives, and children who have been told no so often they've stopped trying. She has turned every single one of them into functioning members of society. Galnesh was still sputtering. But what if the Dragon Monarch attacks her? What if there's actual combat? Then she'll do what she does every day, Chen said with absolute confidence. She'll use her teacher voice. The Galactic Council had heard many strange things in its long history, but this was perhaps the strangest proposal ever put forward. Yet something about the human ambassador's quiet certainty gave even the most skeptical delegates pause. The vote was closer than anyone expected. In the end, it came down to a simple fact. Every other approach had failed. The Dragon Monarch had faced warriors, she had faced conquerors, she had faced beings of immense power and cosmic knowledge. Perhaps it was time to try something completely different. The motion passed by a margin of 3 votes. Within hours, a priority transmission was sent to Earth, specifically to a small elementary school in Phoenix, Arizona, where Miss Sarah Martinez was currently helping 6-year-old Tommy Chen, no relation to the ambassador, learn to tie his shoes. The message was simple: the galaxy needs you. Sarah Martinez, who had been teaching kindergarten for 15 years and thought she had seen everything, was about to discover that managing 25 5-year-olds was actually perfect training for the greatest challenge in galactic history. When the official galactic transport arrived to pick her up 3 days later, Sarah was ready. She had packed her emergency teaching kit: colored pencils, gold star stickers, a box of tissues, hand sanitizer, and a thermos of coffee that could probably power a small spacecraft. As the transport lifted off from Earth, carrying perhaps the most unlikely galactic champion in history, Sarah Martinez looked out the viewport at the stars and smiled. After all, how hard could one overgrown cosmic entity be compared to explaining to little Emma why she couldn't have cookies for lunch every day? The galaxy was about to find out exactly what humanity's secret weapon really was. The unshakable determination of a kindergarten teacher who genuinely believed that every problem could be solved with patience, understanding, and the occasional strategic use of indoor voice. The journey to Velcathara's domain took 3 standard galactic days, during which Sarah Martinez became something of a legend among the transport crew. She had somehow managed to organize the entire ship's mess hall, taught the Zephyrian navigator how to make proper coffee, and helped the ship's engineer resolve a long-standing dispute with his teenage offspring via subspace communication. You know, Captain Hexler mentioned to his first officer as they watched Sarah demonstrate proper hand-washing technique to a group of fascinated crew members, I'm starting to understand why the humans sent her. The obsidian fortress world of Velcathara loomed ahead like a geometric nightmare carved from crystallized darkness. Lightning danced across its surface in patterns that hurt to look at directly, and space itself seemed to bend and twist around the massive structure. It was beautiful in the way that natural disasters were beautiful, awe-inspiring, terrible, and absolutely not something you wanted to get too close to. Sarah stood at the observation deck, her teacher bag slung over her shoulder, looking completely unperturbed by the cosmic horror before them. She pulled out a small notebook and jotted down a few observations. Interesting architecture, she murmured. Very dramatic, definitely designed to intimidate, classic authority through fear approach. Captain Hexler's tentacles twitched nervously. Champion Martinez, are you certain you wish to proceed? Even now, we could contact the council and request a different approach. Sarah turned to him with that patient smile teachers reserve for well-meaning adults who are overthinking simple situations. Captain, I've walked into classrooms where 25 children were simultaneously crying, fighting, throwing things, and somehow setting off the fire alarm. This is just architecture. The transport docked at what appeared to be a landing platform carved from a single massive crystal. The air itself seemed to hum with barely contained energy, and the gravity felt heavy and oppressive. Most beings would have been terrified. Sarah stepped off the transport, adjusted her bag, and looked around with professional interest. Needs better lighting, she noted, and some plants would really brighten up the place. A delegation of Dragon Monarch's servants approached, beings of shadow and flame, that existed more as concepts than actual creatures. They moved with the fluid grace of nightmares given form, their voices echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. Mortal champion, they spoke in unison, their words carrying the weight of cosmic dread. You stand upon the threshold of eternity. The great Velkathara awaits. Prepare yourself for judgment. Sarah looked at them thoughtfully, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small bottle of hand sanitizer. Before we go anywhere, we're all going to clean our hands. I don't know where you've been, and hygiene is very important. The shadow beings paused, their terrible forms flickering with what might have been confusion. We do not possess physical hands in the manner you suggest, one of them managed. Then we'll work with what we have, Sarah said cheerfully, demonstrating the proper sanitizing motion. Now, who can tell me what we say when we want someone's attention politely? The beings of shadow and flame, ancient servants who had witnessed the birth and death of stars, found themselves mumbling, please, and excuse me, as they led the way through corridors of living crystal and passages that defied conventional geometry. The throne room of Velkathara was a space that existed in more dimensions than most minds could process. It was vast beyond measure and intimate as a whisper, filled with the accumulated power of millennia and the weight of cosmic authority. At its center, upon a throne carved from crystallized time itself, sat the Dragon Monarch. Velkathara was not actually a dragon in any sense that most species would recognize. She was something far older and more fundamental, a being of pure will and cosmic force that had chosen a form that spoke to the primal fears and awe of younger species. Her scales were fragments of collapsed stars, her eyes held the depth of black holes, and her presence pressed against reality like a weight that could crush entire civilizations. She was magnificent, terrible, and absolutely the most challenging authority figure Sarah had ever encountered. So, Velkathara spoke, her voice echoing through dimensions. The young species send me a teacher. The word dripped with cosmic disdain. This is meant to be their strongest champion. Sarah walked forward, seemingly unbothered by the reality-warping pressure of the Dragon Monarch's presence. She stopped at what she judged to be an appropriate distance and clasped her hands in front of her in the universal teacher position. Your Majesty, she said politely, I'm Sarah Martinez. I understand you've been having some concerns about the current state of galactic civilization. Velkathara's massive head tilted slightly, and several nearby stars flickered. Concerns? Child, I have witnessed the rise and fall of 1,000 species. I have seen empires that span galaxies crumble to dust. The current civilization is weak, soft, unworthy of the cosmos they inhabit. They send me warriors and conquerors and beings of power, all of whom fail to understand the fundamental nature of strength. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That sounds frustrating. How long have you been dealing with this problem? The question was so unexpectedly direct and practical that Velkathara found herself actually answering. 3,000 years since the last time anyone impressed me. 3,000 years of disappointment and mediocrity. 3,000 years, Sarah repeated, pulling out her notebook and jotting something down. And in all that time, has anyone ever asked you what you were actually looking for? The Dragon Monarch's eyes narrowed and reality shimmered around the edges. What I seek is irrelevant. What matters is strength, will, the power to shape reality itself. With respect, Your Majesty, Sarah interrupted gently, that's not actually an answer to my question. The throne room fell completely silent. Even the cosmic winds that perpetually howled through the fortress seemed to pause. In 3 millennia, no one had ever interrupted Velcathara mid-proclamation. "You interrupted me," the Dragon Monarch said slowly, as if testing the words. "I did," Sarah agreed. "You were deflecting from my question, which suggests it hit something important. In my experience, when someone avoids answering a direct question about their feelings, it's usually because the answer makes them feel vulnerable." Velcathara's form shifted, her cosmic presence flickering between states of reality. "Vulnerable? I am the Dragon Monarch. I have destroyed star systems. I have reshaped the fundamental forces of reality. I am power incarnate." "And you're also lonely," Sarah said quietly. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. For a moment, the oppressive weight of cosmic authority seemed to waver, and something much smaller and more fragile peered out from behind the terrible majesty of the Dragon Monarch. "Lonely?" Velcathara's voice was barely a whisper, though it still shook the foundations of the fortress. Sarah set down her bag and pulled out a small, folding chair, the kind kindergarten teachers kept for parent conferences. She set it up and sat down, making herself comfortable. "Your Majesty, you've been testing people for 3,000 years, and every single one has failed. But here's the thing about tests. If everyone keeps failing the same test, the problem usually isn't with the students. The problem is that the test is measuring the wrong thing." Velcathara stared at this small human who had somehow made a cosmic throne room feel like a classroom. "Explain." "You've been asking for champions, warriors, beings of power, but what you really want is someone who can surprise you, someone who can show you something new, someone who can remind you why existence is interesting." Sarah leaned forward slightly. "Am I right?" The Dragon Monarch was very still for a very long time. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of millennia of exhaustion. "I have seen everything, little teacher. Every form of combat, every type of conquest, every possible display of strength and will. I know how every story ends before it begins. I had hoped that perhaps one of these champions might show me something I had never seen before, something that would make existence feel fresh again." Sarah smiled. "Well then, Your Majesty, I think we can help each other, because if there's one thing I know about, it's showing people something they've never seen before. But first, I need to ask you something important." "Ask." "When was the last time you played a game?" The question hung in the cosmic void of the throne room like a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit anywhere. Velcathara, being of immense power and cosmic authority, stared at the small human teacher who had just asked her about playing games. "Games?" The Dragon Monarch's voice carried a note of confusion that would have been amusing if it hadn't been coming from a being capable of reshaping reality. "I am the ultimate arbiter of strength and will across the cosmos. I do not play games." Sarah nodded thoughtfully, the way she did when a student gave her an answer that revealed more than they intended. "When you were younger, and I'm sure there was a time when even you were younger, did you ever play?" Velcathara paused, her ancient memories stirring like sediment in the depths of time. "That was very long ago, before I became what I am now, before I understood the weight of cosmic responsibility." "What did you play?" The Dragon Monarch's massive form shifted, and for just a moment something almost vulnerable flickered in her stardeep eyes. "There was a game, with lights, patterns of energy that would dance and shift, and you had to predict where they would move next. It was entertaining." Sarah reached into her teaching bag and pulled out something that made several of Velcathara's servants gasp in terror. It was perhaps the most dangerous weapon in any teacher's arsenal, a deck of colorful cards. "Your Majesty, I'd like to introduce you to a game my students love. It's called Go Fish." What followed was perhaps the most surreal hour in galactic history. The Dragon Monarch, cosmic entity of unimaginable power, found herself learning the rules of a simple card game from a kindergarten teacher. The servants of Shadow and Flame watched in stunned silence as their eternal mistress asked questions like, "Do I have any threes?" And "What happens if we both run out of cards?" At first, Velcathara approached the game with the same intensity she brought to everything else. She tried to use her cosmic awareness to predict which cards Sarah was holding, attempted to bend probability to ensure she drew the cards she needed, and generally treated it as another contest of power to be won through superior force. "Your Majesty," Sarah said gently after the third time Velcathara had unconsciously warped reality to give herself a better hand, "the point isn't to win using your powers. The point is to play. But if the point is not victory, then what is the point? Sarah smiled. The point is the playing itself, the fun of not knowing what will happen next, the joy of surprise, the simple pleasure of doing something just because it's enjoyable. Slowly, gradually, the dragon monarch began to understand. She stopped using her powers to influence the game. She started laughing when Sarah made a good move or when the cards fell in unexpected ways. She discovered the particular satisfaction of winning through luck and strategy rather than cosmic force. This is pleasant, Velkathara admitted after Sarah had won 3 games in a row through a combination of skill and sheer kindergarten teacher intuition. I had forgotten that activities could be enjoyable without being consequential. Fun is important, Sarah agreed, shuffling the cards with practiced ease. Even for cosmic entities, especially for cosmic entities, actually. When you're responsible for maintaining the balance of reality, you need something that reminds you why reality is worth maintaining. They played several more rounds, and with each game, something fundamental shifted in the Dragon Monarch. The oppressive weight of her presence lightened. The reality-warping pressure that surrounded her eased. Her laughter, when it came, no longer shook the foundations of her fortress. Sarah Martinez, Velkathara said finally, setting down her cards, I find myself in an unusual position. For 3,000 years, champions have come to my realm seeking to prove their worth through combat or displays of power. You are the first to simply sit with me, talk with me, play with me. Your Majesty, Sarah said, beginning to pack up the cards, if I may make an observation from my professional experience. Please. Sometimes when children act out, it's not because they're bad children. It's because they're trying to communicate something they don't have words for. They might be lonely or scared or just need someone to pay attention to them in a positive way. Velkathara was very quiet for a long moment. Are you suggesting that my threats to cleanse the galaxy were acting out? I'm suggesting that maybe you didn't really want to destroy everything. Maybe you just wanted someone to notice that you were hurting. The Dragon Monarch looked down at her hands, massive, scaled appendages that could unmake stars with a gesture. I have been alone for so very long, Sarah Martinez. Alone with the weight of cosmic responsibility, surrounded by servants who fear me and petitioners who want something from me. I had forgotten that existence could include companionship. Sarah reached into her bag one more time and pulled out something that made the shadows themselves seem to brighten. A simple gold star sticker. Your Majesty, she said formally, for learning a new game, for being willing to play without using your powers, and for being honest about your feelings, I'm giving you a gold star. She stepped forward, and with the solemnity of a kindergarten teacher recognizing genuine achievement, placed the sticker on one of Velkathara's massive scales. The Dragon Monarch stared down at the tiny golden star on her cosmic form with an expression of wonder that had not graced her features for millennia. This is mine, she asked softly. It's yours, Sarah confirmed. You earned it. For the first time in 3,000 years, Velkathara smiled, not the terrible expression of cosmic amusement, but the genuine, delighted smile of someone who had received an unexpected gift. Sarah Martinez, the Dragon Monarch said, her voice carrying new warmth. I declare your mission successful. You have indeed shown me something I have never seen before. You have reminded me that existence contains more than duty and power and the weight of responsibility. Does this mean you won't destroy galactic civilization? Sarah asked hopefully. Velkathara laughed, a sound like stellar wind through cosmic flowers. Oh, my dear teacher, I have much better plans now, I think. I think perhaps it is time for me to explore this galaxy properly, not as a judge or destroyer, but as someone learning to play again. She stood from her throne, her cosmic form shifting into something smaller, more manageable, though still clearly powerful enough to reshape reality if needed. I believe I would like to visit your Earth, she announced. I am curious about these kindergarten students who prepared you so well for cosmic diplomacy. Sarah grinned. I'd be happy to introduce you to them, though I should warn you they're probably going to ask if you can breathe fire. Can I breathe fire? Velkathara mused. I had not considered that particular application of my abilities. That could be quite entertaining for them. As they prepared to leave the fortress world together, Sarah reflected on the successful completion of her mission. The galaxy was safe, not because humanity had sent their strongest warrior or their most advanced technology, but because they had sent someone who understood the most fundamental truth about dealing with difficult behavior. Sometimes the most powerful beings in the universe just needed someone to sit with them, listen to their concerns, and teach them how to play. The return journey to Earth was considerably more cheerful than the outbound trip. Velcathara, who insisted that Sarah call her Vel, spent most of the time learning new games and asking questions about human children that ranged from practical, do they require special food, to philosophical, how do you teach them to balance individual desires with group harmony? By the time they reached Earth's solar system, the former dragon monarch had learned go fish, old maid, crazy eights, and had developed a particular fondness for a simple game called I Spy that seemed to delight her cosmic senses. The Galactic Council's emergency session to address the Dragon Monarch crisis was perhaps the shortest in galactic history. Ambassador Chen Wei simply stood up and announced, "Mission accomplished. The Dragon Monarch has decided not to cleanse the galaxy. Instead, she's going to volunteer at Phoenix Elementary as a substitute teacher." The stunned silence that followed was broken only by Representative Galnash's confused rumble. "A substitute teacher." "Children," Velcathara explained to the assembled dignitaries via hologram, a gold star sticker clearly visible on her reduced size but still impressive draconic form, "are apparently the most challenging beings in the known universe to manage effectively. I find myself eager to test my abilities against such formidable opponents." Sarah, standing beside her new friend, added helpfully, "We're starting her off with the easier classes. 3rd grade. 5-year-olds might be too much for someone who's only used to dealing with cosmic forces." And so it was that the greatest threat to galactic civilization became Earth's most unusual substitute teacher. The galaxy learned that humanity's secret weapon was basic kindergarten management skills. And Sarah Martinez proved once, and for all that there was no problem in the universe that couldn't be solved with patience, understanding, and the occasional strategic deployment of gold star stickers. The official record would show that Earth's champion succeeded through superior strategy and unshakable will. The unofficial record, kept in Sarah's teaching journal, simply noted, "Vel had a very good day today, played nicely with others, shared her cosmic powers appropriately. Gold star earned." Sometimes, the most important victories were also the smallest ones. And in classrooms across Phoenix, Arizona, children would soon discover that their new substitute teacher could make the most amazing shapes with light and shadow. New stories about distant stars told from personal experience, and somehow always knew exactly when someone was about to throw a crayon. After all, when you've spent 3,000 years maintaining cosmic order, keeping track of 25 kindergartners is really just a matter of proper preparation and the right attitude. The galaxy was in very good hands.